Hi guys, I'm Mike. Welcome back to our Porsche restoration project. In this video, we're going to go over the cut and polish process of our shell. You can see I've got it masked up here, ready to go. We're going to be using a 3M perfected system. This is a 3-stage polishing compound system. We use different foam pads with a different cut per cream. We'll go over the different colors, what they do, and how we get to the final polishing outglaze, which has no cut. Also, you can see here I've got some new tooling. This is a random orbital sander made by Rupes, Italian made. I think that's how you pronounce it, Rupes. Anyhow, we're going to use that with our Trizact sanding pads. We're going to sand up to 5,000 grit with this guy in most of the broad areas. Also, we've got a random orbital polisher when we get to the compounds, and we have a direct drive old school style polisher. This works really good on the broad areas. We're going to use foam pads for the whole project here. I've used wool pads before. You get a real nice result with wool pads, but quite messy. So I'm going to do polishing pads on this particular one. Also, you can see here I've got my sanding blocks. We do a lot of hand sanding on this, starting off with 1500 grit. I've got them set up in a much different manner than you would normally see going into a project like this. If you've never done this before, say it's your first time going at it, I would recommend watching a lot of video on YouTube before you get started. There's some guys out there, some professionals that just got incredible ability, a lot of skill, a lot of tricks and techniques they can show you to get you through your project. More tricks you have in your bag, better off you're going to be when you get into a tough spot. So for now, let's get this guy rolled outside and let's get started. Okay, got it rolled outside here this morning. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. Conditions are 58 degrees, calm wind, so we don't have any kind of dust blowing around. Also, I've hosed off everything in the area, hosed off our carport, also hosed off everything inside the spray booth, because when I get this car done and put it back in here, I want to make sure we're sanitary conditions in there for the remainder of the build. So the spray booth is going to kind of act like a clean room during our assembly process. So what I've got out here, I've got a soap bucket, which I'm going to be using for my sanding block. I've got a rinse bucket with a clean microfiber rag, and I'll be wiping down the surfaces with that guy periodically. Squirt bottle, and then also let's take a look at my block setup here. So here's our sure tape. This is what I use to set my blocks up with when I like to do my sanding, or real precise sanding. So what I'm doing here is I'm just laminating a piece of sure tape on this block. This comes about the same width, just slightly shy of 1.5 inches there. About the same width as this sanding block, and this is my favorite sanding block for the shape of this car. Also, got a hard block, so this is our soft block with a laminated piece of aluminum. What I do here is I cut a piece of aluminum. I use this in my cabinet business. This works really well, so you can file the edge, you can sand it down. And if I want to, if I need to, I can laminate this guy to this surface and get a hard block out of that also. Hopefully I won't need that. I can just use this for any imperfections. What would I use this for? Maybe I've got a run or a sag in there, or a big piece of imperfection that I need to plane down with a hard surface as opposed to a softer surface like this guy here. And that'll get the job done without affecting the rest of the area around it. And then also cutting up all my strips to apply to our block here, so I'm not fooling around trying to wrap sandpaper and cut and peel while I'm doing my sanding. So labeling my bags, keeping everything in a plastic bag. Also writing on the back side of the sandpaper so I don't get them mixed up if it doesn't have a labeling on it. Having everything ready to go, and then got a bag of microfiber rags here. These all been run through the wash machine. Spin cycle, or no soap, spin cycle, pull out, put them in the plastic bag, and you're ready to go. Okay, so let's just take a look and see what we're trying to sand out here. So our paintwork actually looks pretty good. There is some orange peel in there. You can see, I'm moving it across the paint here, you can see some irregularity in the pattern. So my reflection really is not a perfect reflection. Although it's not bad, I mean, you could go with this. You could just polish this, not do any sanding, and probably look real close to a factory paint job. But what we want to try and do on this build is get as close to a mirror finish as possible. So that's what I'm going to be trying to work out and conform to the shape. And hopefully we won't have any issues in there that's going to need addressing later. All right, let's get the block going, and let's get started on our 1500 grit. Okay, just getting started here. Let's just take a look and see what's going on with our first sanding of 1500. So what I'm doing is I'm just breaking the shine with my long block. I'm just trying to find any kind of low spots, any kind of dust nibs that might be in there. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm just going to drop down, leveling out this surface until my shine goes away. So this is just getting started. What I want to do is just run the block over the whole area and then just kind of assess what's going on in the panel. And then once I have kind of a general idea of what's happening in there, then I can carry on with a little bit deeper sanding. Don't want to sand past our shine. So our shine is our guide coat, so to speak, during this first process. So let me set this up on a tripod. I'll show you the actual sanding pattern and how I'm using my soapy bucket and wiping rag to move through this. Okay, here we go. So taking my block, dipping it in my bucket, and that rinses the block, any kind of debris that might be on there. So we want 2 hands on the block at all times. And also using a small portion of the block when we get into smaller areas. Being careful not to burn through this edge, so we want to stay away from that, keeping pressure off of that. You never want to be doing this. It's always 2 hands. All right, let's wipe that off. A little bit at a time. Put our block in our soapy water while we're waiting. So I'm going to wait it out, and I want to see after our haze dries there how much progress we made. So we're just going to be going one step at a time until we get there. Really, this is the worst part of it, just finding a 100% flat surface without burning through. Once you get there, then you're in good shape. All right, starting to look a little bit better. Not quite there yet, but we're getting there. And we're getting there in a way that's safe, and also we can see, you know, we don't have that much more sanding to go. So we want to keep maximum build on the surface and stay away from these edges here. We can catch these later with a different process. Mainly I'm just working the field. Okay, and then here's our pattern for our inside radius. It's just a sweeping crosshatch pattern, and notice I'm rolling the block to the back side of the edge. My pressure is back here as I'm coming up. It's not on the leading edge, it's on the trailing edge. Alright, see what that looks like. Okay, looking good. We're just about there. You can see we're just about leveled out. We have no more imperfections in this area. Not going to go any deeper there. So I'm just going to start working these smaller areas that I haven't done and catch them up, little area at a time. So one piece, one square blotch at a time, and then move over to the next square, and so on. Kind of like pattern sanding, but basically doing an overlap so we get everything. Once I'm there in the area, I'm done. It's really important to stop, not try to keep sanding the whole fender. Okay, so we can't use a block in 100% of all areas. So this tail here is a good example of where you got to convert over to hand sanding. So this has been soaking, so now we're soft with our sandpaper because I want this to conform to the fender. So we're nice and soft, we're folded over, plenty of thickness to it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do the same pattern. This will conform real light. You do one hand on this. I'm only doing a little bit at a time here. Let's wipe that off. As sun comes through, it'll be a little bit easier for us, as when we wipe it down, the sun will flash dry quicker so we can see what's going on. But we want to try and get the orange peel out. It'll be a little bit harder to do without a block, but you can still get it out by pattern sanding and just remaining light with your sanding. Just to take off any dust nibs, any kind of business that might be in there. Just get rid of it. Our machine polishers will really do a number on that once we start polishing with the compounds. Alright, let's let that dry, see what it looks like. Okay, you can see it's dry now, so you can see we're working out our orange peel, not having any kind of issues going on there. So I'm just going to continue to work this whole area by hand until I can convert over to a block. Anything that can use a block, we can get flat with it. That's what we want to be using, but there are times you're going to have to go in there by hand and take it down by hand. Looks like we're going to work out pretty good here. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish off this fender. We'll take a look at it as soon as I have it finished. Okay, so here's an example of what we want to use our hard block for in these kind of situations here. So we're a little high on this outer edge. What happens is when I spray the car with our clear coat, we get like a hydrostatic tension buildup on our outside perimeter edges. Usually on all our panels will look like this. The only way to take care of that is with a hard block. So I'll take my aluminum block here and just wrapping in this case so we can get a nice sharp bend on that guy. And our aluminum edge, so nice and tight. Dip it in our water here, and we're just shaving it. That should take it down and keep it flat. If we use our soft block, what's going to happen? It's just going to conform to the shape of the buildup there. It won't really flatten it out. That should pretty much take care of it. Let it dry, see what it looks like. Okay, that took care of it nicely. You can see it's all nice and flat now. So we go to our compounds or our finer grits. That won't be any kind of issue. Just treat it like the rest of the area on the car. Okay, just about done with this fender. I'll take a look at it here before we move on to 2000 grit and then with the rest of the car. Okay, this side's complete to where I like it. So it took about 2 hours total to get through this whole thing. Haven't found anything in there at all I need to be concerned with. So from this point forward, actually, it's going to get easier and easier. Let's just take a look at how much sandpaper I've used. Used about 8 strips of our 1500 in our cuts there, and had to switch out the sticky back on our sanding block just one time. Sometimes they get a little bit grungy and it won't stick properly, so you have to switch that out. And 1 full sheet of sandpaper torn in half to get through this. So yeah, it looks real good. I even did inside the door jambs here. Not going in these areas here, a little bit to knock it down flat here, but staying away from the edges. When we run the polisher over that, we want as much build on there as possible. Don't really want to be sanding the edge. We can sand some of the flat area because we can get a polisher in there, but that's probably as much as you want to be sanding down on that. And then when we roll this thing on its side, take a look at the bottom side of this rocker and address anything we didn't get here in this position. Okay, so let me put some white guide coat on this. I'm going to use our dry coat here. Going to powder the whole thing in white and then start our 2000 grit. So really all we're trying to do now, we're not trying to work out any imperfections. We're just going to take down the 2000 or the 1500 grit sanding scratches, take them up to 2000 grit. Okay, 100% coverage here. You want to make sure you got everything covered that's got any 1500 scratch on it anywhere, even in the tightest spots, because you won't be able to find it once you start sanding with the 2000, and you don't want to confuse the two, because if you don't get the 1500 scratches out with a 2000 grit, you'll have to get them out with the compounds, which can be very difficult or almost impossible to polish them out. So once we got it powdered, we just wipe down the excess. Just wipe it in there so only the scratches are receiving the guide coat. You can see in there now. You can see how it's just kind of revealing itself in there. I'm not caking it on there where I'm working against the guide coat to sand it off. It's just a damp rag, damp microfiber rag. But that'll show everything as I'm sanding and make it real easy for me to get where I need to get and then stop. Okay, you can see the gray starting to reveal itself under there. I'm sanding. And that's what we want to do. We just want to get rid of the white, and then we're there. I'm not going to wipe this because then I'll just kind of reapply the guide coat, but I'll be able to see through the sun, and also you can see what's going on there if we just rinse it. Okay, so that's it. That's 1,500 grit scratches transferred to 2,000 grit scratches. Okay, got through that in about an hour. That's a little bit smoother than first go around with our 1,500 grit. Easier to follow, not so much of a stress or a workout. You're not trying to work out any imperfections, you're just trying to take out the heavier sanding scratches. But that's pretty much what it should look like. It should be real uniform looking. All your shiny spots, any kind of little divots, they should all be gone through this stage. Some of this area I'm not doing. I've got a door sill. It's going to sit in here, our scuff plate. Inner door jamb there. Hand sanded that. And just staying away from anything that could be trouble or I might possibly burn through. Main thing is we're just getting the big, broad, flat areas. And as you come around to the front here, work the rocker panel as far down as I could get it. Seems like it's going pretty good, but when I roll it on its side, pretty sure I'm going to find some things on the very bottom edge of it that I can't see from this position. We'll take care of that when it gets on its side. And then also our inner jamb there. I'm not going to do any sanding on that at all. Start sanding on that, you could get into trouble. So we'll just hit that with a polisher, tune it up, and that'll look real nice. Okay, I'm going to do the other fender and then wrap it up for today. Tomorrow we'll pull it back out here in the cool temperatures of the morning and roll it on its side and do the top. And we'll also do the engine jamb area, and then the front hood goes. This guy here. This is all hand sanding here, but we'll tune that up while it's on its side. And then also we'll do our valance here, front valance. That way all the water drips to the ground rather than running inside the car. Okay, let's finish up that under fender and then we'll get on with the top side. Okay, here we go. Superman lift. And then I always put the front end second. That's it, so it's balancing on the dolly. And now we'll kick the dolly out, roll it over. Alright, just clean our surface before we get started here. A little bit fresh out here this morning, a little bit cold. But using our sticky system with our sanding blocks, it works better in the cold temperatures. Gets too warm outside, then what happens is you have a tough time peeling off the sanding paper from the sticky. We'll set one up here and show you how that works. Okay, so our sanding block then, what I'm doing is I'm just taking our sanding block, I'm going to dip this in the soap, cold, and then I've got a fresh cut 1500 grit marked off and labeled here. I'm not going to pre-soak this piece, so this works better straight and rigid. So this one's going to be dipped in the soap bucket, this one's going to be dipped in the rinse bucket, and then I'm just going to stick them together and start. Try to center it up on there as best we can. Just smooth it out, and that's it, ready to go. Pretty easy to do. If you choose to do it this way, a little bit more frustrating when this starts to delaminate can have some issues there, but you know, it is a real safe way to do it. You don't have any kind of baggy edge going on here and here, which could be affecting your lead edge or your trailing edge. This is a real sure way to ensure you're dead on the surface. Real slow there. That's a perfect plane. Use a soap, which helps break the surface tension. If you try to do it with just water, it'll just vacuum stick itself there, just suck itself right to the surface. Yeah, so I've just finished long blocking our entire roof by hand. So what I want to do, I want to take our random orbital sander here, using a 1500 grit Trizact pad directly onto the base of our sander. So no interface pad for this process. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to float the whole surface just to make sure everything is connected and even and leveled out. Not using this to get there, but just using this up as a finishing tool for this grit. So this likes to be put on damp. I'll show you how that works. That does a real nice job of just getting it ultra flat. We'll go over this more on our next video, what to do with the 3000 and 5000 grit using an interface pad. But yeah, real happy with that. We'll just continue to work the rest of the surface, make sure we're covered, and that should do it. Okay guys, I think we're there for this one. So about 16 hours to finish this thing complete. And as you can see, quite a messy proposition. I'd also like to point out that the block system that I've shown you here in this video, this is just one way to do it. It's the way I did it. I'm comfortable with it, but if you give it a try and it's not working for you, I wouldn't force it to go. The main thing when you're sanding your car, use really good quality sandpaper and that you're comfortable with the tooling and techniques that you're using. Better to be safe than sorry. You have an accident at this stage, it can be really painful. Okay, so our next video, we're going to go over the polishing system on this. We're going to do our Trizact sanding pads, also our 3M perfected system, the different compounds, and also the different foam pads. So I can't wait to see this guy shining again. All right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.